inpatient. So Vinila will give you a small brief about this person, and then we will move to the examination findings. Yes. The mic. You have the mic there? Yeah, yeah, there. Here. Yes, Vinila, go ahead.
A 65-year-old male who is a farmer came to the
Is Vinila audible to everyone? Is she audible? Yeah, okay, go ahead, go ahead.
he came to our OPD with chief complaints of shortness of breath since 20 days and pedal edema since 20 days. He was apparently asymptomatic 10 years ago. Uh, then as he was having knee pain, he started taking NSAIDs given by the RMP. Then 1 year ago, he had a fracture for which he was treated at government hospital where he was told that he was having a kidney issue, chronic kidney failure. Uh, then 9 months back, he also had injection steroid for his knee pain. Now he presented to us with complaints of shortness of breath and pedal edema. So by sir, X-ray, should I put the X-ray?
No, no, no. On examination of the patient. Yeah. On examination of the patient. So basically, what Vinila has presented to you is a patient with shortness of breath and pedal edema. So, what will be your thoughts on seeing such a patient with shortness of breath and pedal edema? Okay, let's give it to the interns and ask them what will be their thoughts. Shortness of breath and pedal edema. Sarupa, why don't you answer it? Everybody has to get the logbook signed. Yeah.
Renal causes, sir. Cardiac.
Renal causes, yeah, I think cardiac causes will be higher up in your mind because even in renal cause, shortness of breath and pedal edema can be renal if there is a proteinuria, if there is a nephrotic syndrome. But shortness of breath, as soon as you say that, that means there is a cardiac cause coming in here. So that's a volume overload state. Even renal failure can lead to volume overload and heart failure, isn't it? So you can think of a heart failure for a patient of shortness of breath and pedal edema. So what are the things that you notice in this general examination of the patient when you think of a heart failure patient, given the data which you have been given? Heart failure, and given this picture of the patient sitting in front of you, I hope all of you can see him. Well taken picture by Vanilla. The neck is visible, the JUP is visible. I mean, if there was a JUP rise, it would be visible. Supraclavicular area is visible. The trapezius is visible. The clavicle is visible. The humerus bone, the deltoid, the groove there, on the chest, anterior part of the chest, everything is visible. So, what are the things which you would like to look at in such a patient? Yes, you can. All of you can use the message box. So, can we see the message box? Have they messaged anything? I guess there is some message there. Lot of messages, in fact. Okay, somebody is saying cardiomegaly. Simran is saying cardiomegaly. And cardiomegaly, okay. But before that, yes, Vinila, your thing disappeared. Huh? Huh? Yeah, chat has opened, so that has disappeared, is it? No, no. Okay, let it be. So, what are this? So Simran has just commented cardiomegaly. So Vinila, can you tell us how to look for cardiomegaly in this patient whom you are presenting? Yeah, where is that patient again? The picture of the patient. Maybe you need to click there. Huh? Can you all see the picture of the patient now? Just double click on that. There something is opening. Hi. Okay. So how do you bring the picture back? We need that picture. Can you call Mr. Kiran? Call him. We need the picture back. So how about if you press on that arrow which has been shown? Okay, now go to the other place where it is open. No, it's not there. Okay. Mr. Kiran is not around. Are you all able to see the picture, which we are not able to see now? Of course, you can see it by opening it in all your mobile phones, but we wanted to see it there because it would help us also. Yeah, but where is the picture that we are presenting? Ah, there it is, there it is. Okay, good, good. Now it's come. Yeah. Okay, so this is the thing which you will be facing in your examination, as in clinical examination. You know, and clinical examination is there in real life. It is there in your exam life, and this is the chest which you see. Simran is saying that we should look for cardiomegaly in a patient of shortness of breath and pedal edema. But before that, I think we should look for the JVP. So here Vinila has not noticed any raised JVP. So that finding is there. Now Vinila hasn't mentioned all the findings in the chest. So would you like to look at the chest or the heart? I think we have to first look at the heart, because from whatever you have presented, it looks like a cardiac problem, isn't it? So what are your findings in the heart? What is the finding in the palpation of the heart? Like, is there a cardiomegaly on palpation? So when you palpated the heart, apex beat, yes, Simran is saying rightly apex beat. When you palpate the apex beat, where was the apex beat? Was it in the normal position, normal fifth intercostal space, medial to the midclavicular line, isn't it? So it was in the normal position, so there was no cardiomegaly. And could you feel any parasternal heave, any palpable sounds, any palpable murmurs? No, no palpable thrills or palpable sounds or heaves. So the heart appears to be normal here, isn't it? So now we'll move to the examination. So if it is not a problem of the heart, can it still be a problem of the respiratory system? Because ultimately shortness of breath also signifies respiratory system, isn't it? So we will look at the respiratory system. Was there a message there? Okay. Now respiratory system, Vinila, can you tell us how you will start? We'll start with the inspection. So in the inspection, do you notice anything here? The light is not in our favor and the screen looks dark to us from here. I hope it is better from your end. So in inspection, do we find anything? So what would be very important in inspection? On inspection, most importantly, is there a deformity of the chest? Like, is the chest going hollow in one area? Or is there a bulging of the chest? So if there is a hollowing, Srinija, what will it signify if there is a hollowing of the chest on inspection? And Swarupa, what is so Sujana, what will it signify if there is a bulging of the chest on inspection of a chest examination? Hollowing, bulging, very simple things. Yeah, barrel shape, it is a complete bulging in all the aspects, you know, anteroposterior diameter, everything. But yeah, not that. Yeah, okay, even it is hollowing out in the sternal area, then it can be pectus excavatum. If it is bulging in the sternal area, it's pectus carinatum, yes. So pectus excavatum doesn't signify anything, it's just a congenital deformity. Whereas pectus carinatum can suggest a congenital heart disease, where there is right ventricular hypertrophy in the young age, when the chest is developing. So whenever you have a carinatum, you can think of a congenital heart disease. where the patient has got it at a young age, congenital heart disease. So that is in the sternum area. What about in the other chest area? The chest area, which is the supraclavicular area, the mammary area, the infraaxillary area, but mostly the supraclavicular and infraclavicular area, even the suprascapular area. You can show as Vinila the other from the back, the suprascapular. It is there, see? Ah, yeah, Sai can show. Sai Charan can show. Yeah, one of them you will have to take. Yeah, very good. So this is the back of the patient. So on palpation, now from inspection we go to palpation. So on inspection, if we had seen a hollowing in the supraclavicular area or the infraclavicular area, we would have thought of a volume loss. So in chest, in the lungs, when do you have volume loss? So volume loss is noticed when there is a collapse of the lung. So when can you have a collapse of the lung? Most important cause of collapse is adsorption collapse, where the bronchus is blocked. Okay, so if there is a bronchogenic carcinoma or even a foreign body blocking the bronchus, you will have a collapse which will cause hollowing of the chest. It's a very common finding. You will all get the opportunity to see it. And if there can also be a collapse if the lung tissue is getting fibrosed and is getting collapsed because of fibrosis. So even there you will have hollowing of the chest. Now in this man, we don't have any hollowing. Now where can you have a bulging of the chest? Now in a two-dimensional picture like this, which you are seeing, unfortunately, bulging or a hollowing can be very difficult to make out unless it is very, very prominent. So we are not expecting any bulging here, but still, where can you see a bulging of the chest? So bulging is just the opposite of collapse. So if you have a tumor of the lung, you will expect a bulging. If you have got a pleural-based mass lesion of the pleura, you will expect a bulging, isn't it? So these are simple things which you will be expected to know in the clinical examination of the chest. Now we move to the palpation of the chest. So Dr. Vinila or Dr. Sakshi there, how will you palpate the chest and say that there is a pathology? So first you put your hands on the supraclavicular area, because what we can see now is the supraclavicular area. So you put both your hands on the supraclavicular area, put both your hands on the interscapular area, and put both your hands on the infrascapular area. So what you will notice in this patient, or what you would have noticed, is that it is moving less, yes, unequally. The right supraclavicular, interscapular, infrascapular is moving less than the left side. And show us the anterior part of the chest. Yes, and even in the anterior side, the right infraclavicular is okay, but the right inframammary is moving less, infraaxillary is moving less. So you see the infraclavicular mammary is okay, supraclavicular is also actually okay, interscapular is all right, infrascapular is moving less. So it seems the pathology is in the inframammary, infraaxillary and infrascapular area. So now can any of you tell us where is the middle lobe and where is the upper lobe in this patient? Can any of you draw it and show us? I'm not sure if you can draw it from your end so that the cursor will show here. That will be difficult. Okay, so Vinila will show us where is the upper lobe of this patient, upper lobe of the lung, and where is the middle lobe with the cursor. Yeah, can you? So Vinila is showing that as the upper lobe, and the middle lobe. Where is the middle lobe? So Vinila, what is separating the upper lobe from the middle lobe? How did you hit upon this area as the middle lobe? So it is the horizontal fissure which is coming from the second intercostal space and touching the oblique fissure. And the oblique fissure is starting, show us the behind, posterior part. Yeah, and the oblique fissure is starting from the T2 spine. And it is going down like that. Yeah, bring it down, the arrow, I mean your hand, and going below the scapula and meeting the fourth intercostal space in the front. Okay, go back to the front. Yes, so it has come to the fourth intercostal space. So now we will again show you the space between the second intercostal space and fourth intercostal space, which she already showed, is the middle lobe. Yeah, so the fourth intercostal space there, that is the second, and this is the fourth. Yeah, so this squarish area is the middle lobe, and above that is the upper lobe, including the supraclavicular area. And the lower lobe is completely at the back, other than the suprascapular area. So the complete back portion below the scapula or the suprascapular area is the lower lobe. Whereas upper lobe and middle lobe in the right side is all in the front. Whereas in the left side, the upper lobe is all in the front and the lower lobe is mostly in the back. Isn't it? So this is something which all of you have to know as a part of your knowledge in anatomy before you examine a patient in medicine. Examine the chest, that is. So now Vinila has already given a hint by saying that the movement is reduced in the inframammary, infraaxillary and infrascapular area. Unfortunately, she didn't mention any of these findings when she was making the log, but now she is telling you. So what would you think by these findings? If the movement is reduced in these areas, what is the next thing you would do, and what is your impression from this? Whereas the movement is absolutely normal on the left side. Yes, anybody? Okay, so nothing is coming. So Vinila, we move to the percussion. So tell us about the percussion note. Use the mic. Okay. Yes, quick. Yeah.
It was dull in inframammary area and
Dull in the inframammary area, and what kind of dullness? Is it this kind of dullness or this kind of dullness? Yeah. This or this. So woody dullness versus stony dullness. So what was it? Stony dullness, isn't it? It was stony dullness. So stony dullness in these areas. So anybody? Yes, right-sided middle lobe pleural effusion. So Simran, why middle lobe pleural effusion? Simran's face is not visible in this. No? Something is wrong with the lighting. Okay. Why the middle lobe? Why not? Why not a pleural effusion in the lower lobe, around the lower lobe, that is? And so see Simran, when Unila said middle lobe, she said from the second interosseous space to the fourth interosseous space. But when she's saying dull note, she's saying below the mammary area, which is below the nipple.
Yeah.
So one thing about that which can confuse everybody is in the right side below the nipple, you also have vanilla what? Which will be actually dull in everybody. Everybody will have dullness in that area below the nipple because of right side no. So actually everybody will have, yes, because of the liver, good Sakshi. Yes, liver dullness. So because of liver dullness, everybody will have dullness there, and that part, of course, may not be significant in this, or whatever is causing the dullness in the infraaxillary and infrascapular area could also be causing it over the liver dullness. So anterior is very difficult to say. So you have to put your money on the infraaxillary and the infrascapular area. So if the infraaxillary and infrascapular are dull, that means, as you said, not only just middle lobe but a pleural effusion around the lower lobes as well, isn't it? And that's very common. So now we go to the auscultation. So Vinila, what were the findings of auscultation?
decreased breath sounds were
Decreased breath sounds where?
in infrascapular area.
In the same areas where the
Area
dullness was there, the
dullness
breath
was
sounds were also reduced,
Yes.
isn't it? Whereas the infraclavicular, suprascapular, supraclavicular, even mammary area, even axillary area, they were all normal.
there or
Normal breath sounds, and in the left side also all areas were normal vesicular breath sounds. So only reduced breath sounds in the right inframammary, infraaxillary and infrascapular area. So that would again suggest a what kind of a diagnosis? Yes, anybody? As Simran has already said, possibility of pleural effusion is very high on the cards. Can it be a pneumothorax? And why is it not a pneumothorax? I mean, any pleural pathology can't it be? Well, we know in pneumothorax the breath sounds will be reduced. Why can't it be a pneumothorax? Or why can't it be, okay, pneumothorax shows a hyperresonant, yes, good. So, but this patient is showing dullness and percussion. Very good. Yeah, so simple, isn't it? So, pneumothorax would have been more resonant. This is dull. So, pneumothorax is out. Any other pleural-based pathology or any other pathology which it can be? Can it be a mass lesion in the lower lobe or in the middle lobe? Again, if it is a middle lobe mass lesion, the middle lobe would have been thoroughly involved. Here it is not looking involved at all. So if at all, it's a lower lobe mass lesion. But lower lobe mass lesion only in that area and not going up is also very, very unusual. Yeah, what was written there? I forgot to see. Hemothorax, yes. Of course, other than, air, all kinds of fluid can be there. Hemo, pyro, and any other fluid? Chylothorax. So all these thorax can be there, and they'll all mean the same pleural effusion basically. Yeah, could it be thickened pleura? Very good question. You see, these undergraduate students are really something, some of them. So yes, could it be a thickened pleura? How to differentiate thickened pleura from an effusion? Vanilla. This is your junior's question to you, which has made life difficult for you. But really, they're very good juniors, some of them. So you see, if there is a thickening, there is a hint of fibrosis here. So what we mean by thickened pleura is pleural fibrosis. So what will be the most important feature of pleural fibrosis, which you can diagnose from here only, just by looking at the patient on clinical examination? Huh? One is somebody would have done a tap in the past when it was not thickened, when it was inflamed, but somebody may not have done that. I couldn't see what was written there. Huh? Spirometry just tells you about the lung function, but not about the pleura really. So yeah, let's go back to the image there. Yeah, there. So thickened pleura would show volume loss because of fibrosis, as I told you. Now pleural fibrosis also pull the chest, inside. So very, very classical thickened pleura. You will have all phases of pleural effusion, but the chest will be, instead of bulging out, it will be indrawn, and the intercostal space will also be, all crowded together. So that is the technical way to differentiate clinically thickened pleura and pleural effusion. Now we can move to the X-ray and see what it is showing. Okay. Let's see if you are right. Yeah. So this is a very classical picture of a blunted angle, costophonic angle in the right side, and the left side the costophonic angle is normal. So obviously this is a pleural effusion. There's a S-shaped curve, very typical of a pleural effusion, and there seems to be an interlobar effusion also in the upper part, which is probably separating the middle lobe from the upper lobe. Isn't it? There's a thin streak of, you can put your finger, yeah, that thin streak is the interlobar effusion. So I think Vanilla did this tap. She doesn't have a selfie video to show how she did it, but you took out some fluid from it, isn't it? So our approach to pleural effusion starts here. We take out the fluid to know whether it's an exudative or transurative. Because if it's transurative, we can think of heart failure causing the man's problem. But as it happened, it turned out to be exudative. The protein LDH ratios were all high, and it turned out to be exudative, and the cell count was also suggestive of a lymphocytic pleocytosis. So when you have this kind of a thing, you think of an inflammation of the pleura, which is causing a exudative lymphocytic pleocytosis. And commonly this inflammation can happen because of a common bacteria which we have. So we really didn't know what to do with this patient, whether we should treat for the bacteria or not. Empirically, we decided that we will not treat him. So we focused on his other comorbidities and we let him go, and we will follow him up. Yeah, there are certain messages here. Disconnected. Okay, disconnected. So spirometry could be done. Yeah, spirometry nowadays we are not able to do, but in this patient of pleural effusion, we are not really expecting something in spirometry, but we'll tell you where we are expecting something in spirometry. Yeah, similarly saying tuberculosis, right? But then we really can't prove it because it's just exudative with some lymphocytic pleocytosis, which could be tuberculosis, but we don't have a solid evidence. Like if we had taken out the pleura, and we would have had a histopathologic evidence of tuberculosis, granulomas and caseous necrosis, AFBs. We could not show the most important point of Koch's postulate, the Koch's bacillus itself. So currently we are attributing this pleural effusion that somehow it's probably due to his renal failure, or it could be even due to heart failure due to the renal failure. Heart failure having exudative is something very unusual. So we are not thinking of that. We are thinking that it's something to do with his renal failure. And we are managing his renal failure with what? Conservative or dialysis? Only conservative management. And we are hoping to see what happens to his pleural effusion. So if it keeps on increasing and if there are other issues which come up, we will try to dig deeper and find out if we can get any close to tuberculosis this time. Because with tuberculosis, we have other systemic symptoms as well. So we are kind of keeping him to wait and watch on him. Now from this pleural-based lesion, we will take you to a parenchymal-based lesion, which was shared by Rohini, isn't it? So in Rohini's log, we can we go there and we'll show them the findings there. So here this patient's findings are, you can make the diagnosis by looking at the general examination. Actually, when this patient came to Dr. Chandana and all of us, we were quite confused as to why she has got again features of pedal edema and shortness of breath. So you see, most of our patients who came to us, all of them in fact, most of them had pedal edema and shortness of breath, or most of them except Deepika's patient, which is the toughest patient for today. I'm not sure if we will be reaching that much today. So yeah, so we are opening Rohini's. We are opening, yeah. So from a pleural-based lesion in pulmonology, we move to a parenchymal lesion. And let us see how we diagnose it by looking at the general examination of the patient. So, yeah, so over to Dr. Chandana for a brief introduction to the patient. Don't give away the diagnosis. Just tell us your findings, your history. I think history would be okay. Yeah, just go down and focus on the one finding. Yeah, maybe that. Okay. Go down. Yeah, Chandana, you start.
A 60-year-old woman came with the complaints of bilateral knee pain, aggravated since 5 days, and bilateral pedal edema since 5 days. And she is apparently symptomatic 10 years back when she had a fever episode lasting for 3 to 4 days, after which she had pain in multiple joint pains. The sequence of the joint pains she couldn't remember, but there were also swellings of the joints for which she used medications, and it involved her ankles, knee, wrist, and also fingers. And then patient also complained of early morning stiffness, which lasts for about 1 hour after getting up, and she used multiple medications and she visited multiple hospitals. She didn't have any proper records of those, and patient also complained of back pain 5 years back, for which she used LS belt and it got subsided. And 1 year back she underwent a total knee replacement for right knee, and since then she is walking with a stick. And from 15 days, due to severe pain in the left knee, she is not able to walk.
So we have a patient with multiple joint pains, polyarthritis for a long time, and we have a patient, the same patient coming to us with shortness of breath and pedal edema for a recent time, isn't it? And on examination, as we just showed you, the JEP is raised. There is pedal edema in all the images on the general examination, and on the general examination, we have also noticed certain picture of joints. I think why she has left that, she has removed that picture of where she was folding her hands, isn't it? There was a pedal edema. So we asked her to take another picture, not remove it. Yeah, let's go up of the joints. Was there a video of the joint where it was going like this? As they could not be uploaded, yeah. Okay, so we have this joint deformity of the hallux, but I think the most important joints are not being shown to you, that of the hand joints. So there are very classical deformities in the hand joints. What kind of deformity? Swan neck deformity, Boutonniere deformity, I think she removed the pictures because of the patient's face has become visible. So we asked her to crop it out. So we will ask Rohini to put it back after cropping it out properly, isn't it? So very, prominent pictures in the hand joints where, of course, whatever you could see on inspection of the deformities, but on palpation we also palpated synovial thickening and the joint space reduction was very, very easily felt. So this was a patient of rheumatoid arthritis with the classical deformities and findings. And so in a patient of rheumatoid arthritis who develops a right ventricular failure, what kind of a reason will we think of? Yes, Srinija? What reason will we think of in a patient of rheumatoid arthritis who develops right ventricular failure? Oh, she is Srinija or you are Srinija? You are Spandana? Supraja. Okay. Yeah. Ah, Spandana is there. No, she is Srinija or Spandana. No, she. I mean, Srinija, right. Okay. And Supraja. Yes, Supraja? Can you tell us, in a patient of rheumatoid arthritis developing right ventricular failure, shortness of breath, myocarditis? No, that doesn't happen in rheumatoid arthritis. Right ventricular failure, not left ventricular failure. So, what is the second commonest cause of right heart failure, students? So, commonest cause of right ventricular failure, I think we covered is left ventricular failure. The second and commonest cause is
Hepatic.
on the message board. So the second commonest cause is lung disease, isn't it? So a rheumatoid arthritis patient developing a lung disease is a possibility because all of you know that the rheumatoid arthritis can also affect the lung. So now we take a look at the lung. So we will take you directly to the, of course, Chandana saw the patient's chest and she saw that the patient had crepitations, and those crepitations are very typical Velcro-like crepitations, isn't it? Very high-pitched Velcro-like crepitations. And then we got an imaging done, which you can see here. I guess she has not put any X-ray here. Okay, that's fine. Let's look at these imaging. These are nothing but X-rays, 200 X-rays taken from multiple directions. So it's the same as X-ray, but they are three-dimensional. You can see much more in these fields. Can you take us to more this thing? Other images? Yeah, make it bigger. Yeah, can you make this bigger? Huh? Make the screen bigger then. Yeah, can you all see it? Can you make it zoom it or something? Can you see the pathology here in the lungs? This one. Can you all see the pathology here behind the liver where we are listening to those Velcro-like crepitations? Look at what has happened. This is called classical honeycombing of the lungs. So this is very typical of interstitial lung disease, this honeycombing pattern, which says that the interstitium is inflamed and fibrosed. Only when it is very advanced, this thing happens. And of course, currently, because of this advanced interstitial lung disease, she has developed right ventricular failure. So I think we had barely enough time to show you two patients who had, one of them who had a pleural-based disease and the other had an interstitial lung disease, and both were kind of burnt out disease at this point of time, and only for the follow-up will tell us. So now I'll give to Dr. Sai Charan to summarize the learning points for today, and he'll also announce what are the cases for coming week. We already have got a lot of abdominal cases yesterday. So a lot of patients with ascites and various pathologies leading to the ascites have come. We will be shortly sharing with you all those assignments because the new intern batch will come and start, documenting them. So Dr. Sai Charan. So today we had a discussion about pleural effusion, and the clinically we will find out the pleural effusion based on the pleural tapping. The most important theoretical aspect of that and also with practical is Light's criteria. So the Light's criteria basically it contains the pleural fluid LDH proteins. Thing.
అది వాళ్ళు చదువుతారులే ఇంకేమైనా నెక్స్ట్ క్లాస్ ఏంటి నెక్స్ట్ టాపిక్స్ నెక్స్ట్
Okay.
ఇంకా అసైటిస్ ఏంది ఓన్లీ అసైటిస్
Okay. If you have any doubts, feel free to text. Okay. And next week, most probably there will be 2 cases of ascites. I will be switching over to GI system. If you have any doubts, you can chat there. Okay. Dr. Chandana will be replying you regarding her case. Thank you.
దేని గురించి క్లాస్ వన్ డిస్కషన్
It's okay, guys.
టాపిక్